Right, hello indeed. So this is Simon Moore. He's Director of Marketing and Media at Dreams. And we're going to talk about attention now, in fact, and Dreams work in terms of understanding attention better, depending on which media you've got, and the outcomes that spin out of that. So before we dive into all the work that you did, I mean, can you just explain what the problem was that you decided you needed to fix?
Absolutely. Firstly, anyone that was listening to me outside, I apologise because I'm going to repeat some of what we've already talked about. And so reality is that the world that we live in today from a media perspective is far, far more complex than it was 10, 15 years ago, where it was simple. You just bought a couple of press ads and some 10 million plus TV shows and job was done. Come forward into the noughties and it was all about social, digital display. And, you know, today the place is so much more complex. And I think the challenge that exists is every different technology seems to give you a different promise or a different pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and different ways of measuring things. And when we're talking about impressions or pieces like that, it's almost like the so what. So how do we measure what we're actually doing and know that that measurement is not just efficient but effective? So we wanted to try and find a way of doing this, and it was really back in 2020 when we started working with the likes of Lumen. We already had existing measurement in place. We have brand tracking, we run econometrics, we do geo-testing, we do audience incrementality. But really, we wanted to try and focus back on that attention piece and really understand if what we were doing was of any value.
Okay, and before we sort of go through it in detail, just sort of give us a summary of your views having done this work. I mean, would it be fair to characterise it now as you don't believe, well, all views are definitely not equal, therefore all reach is not equal, and basically we shouldn't go after low-cost CPMs just because they're low cost? Yeah,
I think that's a fair point, and I think you're true, not all views are equal. And I think back in 2017, we looked at TV and BVOD and we tried to see whether there was ROI from one or the other and what the performance was. Do people that consume BVOD have a greater propensity to have an output? In our case, the KPI was revenue, to the same as TV. And we measured that back then. Obviously, technology and ways of doing it back then wasn't as solid. But we proved then that the foundation and not all views are equal. And in the last test, or the piece we'll focus on today, it was definitely about that, yes, you can buy loads of impressions at really low price, and that's just efficiency of buying, but they don't all deliver the same results. And I think the output that we've got definitely shows that.
Okay, right, well, let's talk about the studies that you did then. So you started off, I think, by measuring the attention that different media gave you.
Yep.
Can you just talk us through?
So, in order to achieve this, we teamed up with Lumen, as I mentioned, and we wanted to test the efficiency of media from delivering 1,000 seconds of attention. And we ran our test across multiple different platforms, with a main focus in our case as being promo. So we wanted to look at the promotional return that we would deliver rather than long-term brand efficiency, because we wanted to do a second part of the test, which I'll probably talk about shortly, and therefore we focused on promo to deliver it. Now, equally, because we're testing creative is also being tested, you have to make sure that the caveat is creative probably has the biggest driver in terms of any performance. So we made sure that our promo comms were System 1, run through, and Neuro Insights. We knew it was all consistent. We used consistent communication across every test that we did, albeit second lengths changed. And in fairness, you know, we did run this across social, Teads, and YouTube was the primary focus of where we were testing.
So that initial attention testing across the different media platforms or channels, I mean, I believe you stacked it up in terms of cost per CPM first, and then looked at it cost per CPM with attention.
So when you look at, if you look at a CPM basis, you've got TV, BVOD right at the top of the pyramid, social display right at the bottom in terms of cost per thousand. But when you actually run the attention modelling to it, the pyramid is completely flipped. And the likes of TV, BVOD are now the most efficient at delivering 1,000 seconds versus social, which is significantly more higher. In fact, what we learn in terms of our tests, YouTube performs very similar to TV and BVOD in terms of the actual seconds count, roughly on the big screen about 12 seconds of continual viewing, versus social, in our case, only had an average of about 1.2 seconds. So anyone that can sell, influence or change a behaviour in 1.2 seconds is doing a bloody good job. So yeah, they're the key outputs in that context.
Okay, and then you narrowed the sort of study down to just YouTube. Tell us why and what you did there.
Right, so without missing anyone else out, as I said, we did do TEEDs and we have done social, but YouTube was our primary focus. And we've always wanted to understand the different methods, different ways of buying ad content and video content in YouTube. And there's so many, it becomes complex in itself. You talk to Google and they'll talk about very cheap cost of bumper ads, a 6 second. Our view was, well, in 6 seconds you haven't got much time, could you deliver better message through longer formats? Then you've got non-skippable versus skippable. So what we learned is there were some really interesting learnings in this, because we learned that skippable ads performed much better than non-skippable in terms of total seconds viewed. So what it's saying, just because you force someone to watch an ad doesn't mean to say they're actually watching it, and therefore the cost was much more efficient. So that was the first thing that we learned. The second piece was from bumpers, roughly 90% of people that were served a 6 second bumper watched it through to the end. But actually, when you took this 20 second skippable, nearly half of all people that watched those also watched those through to the end. So that's another 14 seconds of viewing that you've got in that content, which then allows you to provide a much more efficient ACPM. So yeah, very good.
So the bottom line was the 20 second ads were the better ones.
Yep, skippable.
Yeah, okay. And then how did you relate all of this to kind of return on investment or effectiveness, if you like?
So, efficiency on the one hand and effectiveness on the other. Our next challenge, being a retailer, it is all about money at the end of the day, and it's all very well me going back to the exec and saying, well, look at that, we bought 10 million impressions where 50% of them have seen it. They'd probably turn around and say, so what? We want to know that what we're doing is actually effective. And it's back to that cheap eyeballs question. So we then brought on Ubiquity and we geo-tested. So we did a number of geo-tests. I think we were doing it for 2 months across different creative platforms and running different region testing with different offers changing. And ultimately what we wanted to achieve was, does the attention side of things that we've just learned and the ACPM become more efficient, and then also stack up with an ROI, so we've got an actual bottom line? And what we learned was it does, because when we looked at the YouTube piece of work and we looked at the 6 second bumpers versus the 20 second skippable, the ROI return from the 20 second was 3.5 times greater than the 6 second bumpers, so that we knew the ROI was not only more efficient, but the fact that we had the ACPM model as well, all stacked up. So it's, yeah, very good set of results.
So at this point, really, you're just testing pure attention. You know it's the same format, the same channel, the same creative, but if you watch longer, you get more ROI.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that comes back to the point that if you are serving ads and the quality of output is low, that someone's only viewing it for 1 or 2 seconds, to try and influence an outcome, it is impossible. But longer format ads, there's always been the argument that longer format ads perform better. And definitely if you've got the attention for those many more seconds, it works out. And equally, it's worth just sharing the point that what we found, that YouTube on the big screen performed once again better than on the small screen. So duration was twice as long. So in terms of viewability, in terms of what the attention was. So yeah, much better as well.
Okay. So what has happened to your media planning as a result of all this knowledge?
Yeah. So. I mean, the truth is, as the guys that have us know, dreams are always a challenge. We don't accept anything that anyone tells us. We're always looking at the next piece of the jigsaw and trying to come up with something different. And straight off the bat, the first thing we did was, right, let's can our video stuff that we're playing through social. We had different platforms running different things, and we basically stripped that back and changed the way we were optimizing. And then we looked at our media mix across TV, BVOD and YouTube. We optimized more media into YouTube. But the challenge that you also face at that point is scalability. And I think scale is a real fundamental factor. So when going from small screen to big screen, we did learn that there wasn't the volume that we could deliver. And what that was then doing is having a reverse effect, because our CPMs